I mean,
Okay, we are now recording. Sterling, this is your deja vu. Go for it.
everything?
Yep.
Okay. Well, I'm not going to. Yeah. Okay. Well, this is the copy of my book. Actually, I guess you saw it better in the former screen. But anyhow, it's a collection of very eclectic poetry. And I've chosen to have this blurb that Rosemary Boehm wrote for me to describe the book. And she does it far more justice than I could ever do. That is to say, she probably goes out of her way and makes it a better book. Flytraps are reader traps. You start and want to know more. Warner is whistling downwind, and his notes are hanging onto gusts, traveling like light speed. There's nowhere Warner won't go, from geese in flight to playing with Ouija boards, seated at your deathbed vigil and shooting the curve. Warner takes you on flights of fancy, journeys of imagination and memories, yet remains without permanent address, back to the wind. So go for it. Let him take you to spy on the dancing rabbits and enjoy the ride. Thank you, Rosemary. And the poem I've selected to read is Lit Up. Solar street lamps illuminate dark corners, expose cobblestone steps leading to a museum. There, relics rest behind bulletproof glass and mischievous shapeshifters oogle. Point, pontificate about the essence of classical art, permeating civilizations to advanced tribal standings, and facilitate religious rituals, celebrate birth and rites of passage in life and the hereafter. Still, even sun-powdered lanterns pale in comparison to flickering mysteries hidden behind gaslight flames. Dancing rabbits encased in beveled glass cast surreal prisms, well sheltered from wind and inclement winter ice. Innovation's holy manger cradles nimble wicks, sidewalks flood beacons or well-lit cellular devices, and showcase carefree pukas. Drunken arms locked around metal posts, swinging in circles until taverns close. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sterling. I have a copy of his book. You should own it too. Okay, unmute, and Nancy, you are up, this time for real.
Okay. All right, I'm Nancy Austin. And again, I'm grateful for this chance to promote my book. It's been hard to do without the in-person gatherings, and this speed dating method is very novel and fun. So thanks, James. I started writing when I was young and never fully got into it until retirement. Prior, I ran a community support program for people with mental illness and loved my job, but between my career and a very, very busy job, I just didn't seem to have too much time to write. So I've moved northwoods in retirement here, and I just love having all the time to write that I want. And again, beautiful nature all around me as my muse. So this is my third collection. I have 2 books with Kelsey Books, and I really appreciated working with them. And this book is from Water's Edge Press, a wonderful press. I highly recommend them if you're looking for a publisher. And the book is called Something Novel Came in Spring. And can you see that all right? There we go.
Yep, we're
Okay,
good.
and there are 6 sections to the book. It was written during COVID, but it's really an eclectic book. Something Novel is the first section, and that's about trying to maintain relationships during COVID. There's the Morning Moon on coping with loss and longing. There's a Parallel Pandemic, and those are poems on social distress and political divisions. And on a lighter note, There's a section on your wings, and that's how in all of our isolation, we formed a greater alliance with nature. I write a lot of nature poems. Muse More is a chapter on the slowing of the clock and how we've had time to reflect on things that we may have not seen before. And then Hope Moon is just our hope to return to normal and appreciate what's ordinary. So I'm going to read a poem from the chapter on parallel pandemics, and it's called Birds Not of a Feather. My husband yells, drop everything, binoculars in hand, points to a black bird on our birch, gray bib and collar, a breast rosier than a robin, heavily blushed cheeks. A different bird, it hops like a woodpecker, forages like a flycatcher, dazzles with deep wing beats of a crow, stays for days, speaks a language we don't know. We search bird books in vain, consult computers, learn of its discovery on Lewis and Clark's journey, breathlessly tell our neighbors, a Lewis's woodpecker. We laud this off-course avian, study its habitat, set a place at our yard's table, host legions of birders who flock from afar, perch on our treetop balcony to receive this odd bird. Odd indeed how we open our arms to the foreign bird, yet spurn a woman who walks from Guatemala, parents who traverse a raging river, their fledglings now caged. Thank you.
Lovely. When you started describing the bird, I thought to myself, that's a Lewis woodpecker.
Did you? Okay.
I
Oh,
did,
you're
because
out west.
I have a couple of photos of them that I caught here in California, and I had no idea what they were and read their description, which matched exactly what you were doing. That's lovely.
Great,
Thank you. Next up should be Ed, but I think he's had to drop out because of problems with his computer and audio. I don't see Pratibha Castle on yet, which brings us to Robert Walton. Unmute and go for it, Robert.
Hi. Again, I appreciate this opportunity, Jim, and to share my book. And I don't know if that shows up or not.
It does beautifully.
Oh, good, good. And it's called Joaquin's Gold. And it's a collection of short stories, all with the same main character, Joaquin Murrieta. And I'd like to talk about him. He was perhaps the most successful bandit in the history of the Old West. In fact, he was so successful that he caused the creation of the California Rangers. Captain Harry Love and his Rangers chased Joaquin all over the state. And then one morning they rode over a hill near Cantua Creek in 1853, and they caught Joaquin's gang having breakfast. There was no demand for surrender. They pulled out their guns and started shooting. And when the gunshots ended, several of the bandits lay dead on the ground. One was identified as Joaquin Murrieta. The Rangers cut off his head and put it in a barrel of whiskey. They didn't have any refrigeration, of course, in those days. And then they took it to the governor of California and showed it to him. And he said, oh, here's your $10,000. And I could talk a little bit about the head. It had an extensive post-mortem career all over California until it got lost in the San Francisco earthquake. But at any rate, Joaquin was dead. Or was he? Someone assuredly took the head, but historian Frank Latta concluded that the man who lost it, Joaquin. Joaquin was supposedly seen with his friends in Los Angeles a few weeks later, and headless didn't work for that visit. But I was intrigued by the possibility of Joaquin surviving the Rangers. And there are lots of legends, lots of stories about him living on to a ripe old age and revisiting various parts of California. At any rate, I took that possibility, and over the last 30 years or so, I've written a number of stories about Joaquin's adventures, and hidden gold, bloody bandits, vengeful miners, mad ghosts, shipwrecks, rattlesnakes. Hey, what's not to like? And the individual stories have all been published in various journals and contest journals and magazines over the years. But an old friend and teaching colleague of mine kind of poked me into assembling them into this Kindle book. It's on Amazon, and so they're all gathered together. And my hope is that they'll resonate with each other, and that the sum of the parts will be the whole will be greater than the sum of the parts. And if I got a little time, I'll read just right from the beginning.
You got 1 minute. Go for it.
Evening wind bent long grass to the east. Golden light washed over the gentle slopes of the Gabilans. Across the valley, mountain shadows grasped dusty ranches with silent fingers of night. Even Soledad was now folded in blue dusk. Miguel turned his eyes back to his sheep, 119 of them. They were clustered in the bottom of a grassy arroyo. His 3 dogs would keep them there for the remainder of the night. He knelt beside his fire and picked up the steaming coffee pot. Chico, his smallest dog, growled from the other side of the fire. Miguel looked up. A man stood on the knoll above with his back to the setting sun. That's it.
That was fabulous. I believe that I've already downloaded that as a Kindle book and taken a look at it. I love history. I love mystery. And I was fascinated with this idea because it resonated of the Elvis sightings that have continued to this day.
Well, I'll add that I borrowed shamelessly from local history and local legends, and I didn't make a lot of this stuff up.
Well, sometimes truth is better than fiction. All right. Thank you, Robert. Sorry.
Hey, thank you.
Hedy, it's time for you. I'm
Okay.
looking forward to this.
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Thank you, Jim, for having me. I will be presenting The Taste of the Earth. It's my 3rd poetry collection, and I have a wonderful publisher, Press 53. And I painted the cover of the book. I'll explain the meaning in a minute. So this book was like 12 years in the making. I have to be very brief about my background because I've lived in different countries. I was born in Egypt. I'm of Lebanese heritage. I've lived many years in Europe, and I've been in the States since 1980. So this book is about roots, recapturing origins, displacements, and in it, in a sort of a memoir and poems, I'm kind of weaving together my memories with my languages and also a lot of mythology. So about the cover art, I painted the cover of my poetry collections, and I chose to paint the Eye of Horus there because I have a very long section titled Meditations over the Eye of Horus, in which I juxtapose ancient Egyptian rituals and myths with either personal memories or more modern histories. And so the Eye of Horus, the falcon god, was a very powerful amulet for the ancient Egyptians. Each part of its eye represented one of the 6 senses. Ancient Egyptians believed there were 6 senses. So the collection has 5 sections. Some go over Egypt or Lebanon. And the last one, the 5th section, revolves around the Arab Springs and the aftermath of violence in the area. When I talk about Lebanon, I also talk about revisiting after 25 years and my impressions upon that time. About the forms in this book, there are numerous forms, pantoums, anime metody sonnets. There is a very long abecedarian that is titled Meditations over Phoenician Letters. I kind of imagined, saw the connections between the Arabic sound that originated in the Phoenician letters and composed these poems. And then also in the section titled Meditations over the Eye of Horus, I'm also using Arabic script and printed symbols. And it's a series for each sense, a series of haibans followed by a list poem. So other than that, I was very happy that it received several awards. The Silver Nautilus Award, the honorable mention for the Eric Hoffer Award, and it was finalist for the Best Book Award. So I'll read a short poem, the title poem. The title poem, The Taste of the Earth. Two fawns cross the creek. One of them pauses, linked to his mirror reflection to the tip of his tongue. Parallel worlds merge on the fault line of a folded image. A musical phrase sticks to your skin. The wind espouses ripples. Liquid dunes lick the shoreline. Give moisture to wild brush, blown over seeds and thoughts. Iridescent hummingbirds hover over purple iris blooms. The shore is faithful to the stream's first touch. Like first love, it nourishes tendrils rising into a green flame. Never forgotten, like the taste of the earth. The desert thirsts for an oasis. A fawn melts into the music of a fable, a gazelle. New memories map rhizomes, twisting, anchoring us farther with each shoot, spreading from our birthplace to everywhere we've lived, to where we live now. And does it make a difference if the root remembers?
Very good. Thank you. A quick note for all of you here. Since I sort of wrestled my way into being the editor of First Virtual, I did that when Firestone was significantly more ill than he was letting on publicly. And I had a number of conversations with him about continuing the journal. His authorization for me to continue was, do whatever you like, Jim. So I did. I've continued this. And one of the things that I have tried to continue is that he was creating a Verse Virtual library, and he invited, not required, but invited those who had published books and wanted to do so to send him a copy of their poetry books, especially those that contain things that had been published on Verse Virtual. So I'm extending that same invitation to you, any of you who feel that you would like to send a copy of your book or books. I will post my mailing address in the chat so that you can have that available. Next person who is set to read is Joan. We're so glad you could join us today, Joan.
Me too.
All right, and go. Your 5 minutes are firing.
Well, here is the book, title backwards, Languid, Lusciusness with Lemon. It was published in 2017. And Lord willing, I have a new book coming out, but I have not signed the contract yet, even though they notified me on Submittable that I was selected for publication. So not doing anything about it. But I will tell you that John Stanizzi of this group and other members of this group were extremely helpful in getting that book put together and making it worthwhile to the publisher. So this one, however, was actually, I don't know if I was even a member yet of Verse Virtual when I wrote it. And Pat Revere Seal, who is a very known poet here in North Carolina and a lovely, lovely person, wrote this about it. The title itself is a call to the table of lush language and insight that melds family and food. So me. In this chapbook, Leotta serves up a feast of poems that explore our deep connections to each other, to food, to what nourishes and sustains us. Life's sweetness stands out, when oft best preserved when accented with tart, she writes in the title poem. And you'll find both the sweet and the tart, along with other subtle flavors in this book. So I'm going to read to you a poem that is one of my favorites in the book, and it's about my dad. Dreaming across the sticks. My father walks into my room wearing his long tan trench coat. A finely blocked felt hat tops his jet black wavy hair. He tamps down the tobacco in his cherrywood pipe, then turns to me, his brown eyes twinkling. He steps back into a poorly lit hallway I do not recognize. Dad removes his coat and sits in an orange plastic chair. Coat on his lap, he draws softly on the pipe and nods toward me. Cherry-flavored tobacco smoke soothes me. Dad is waiting for me, as always. Through theater classes, piano lessons, dance lessons, patiently enmeshed in his own thoughts, he waits without complaint. Suddenly I wake. I'm at home. No hallway, no chair, no cherry tobacco, only the smell of coffee. My father smiles from his photo. Some say dreaming across the sticks means ferryman Charon will soon arrive. Not for me. Instead of Charon, my own beloved father waits patiently to ferry me across the sticks in his white 1960 Thunderbird. I love my dad.
I like
Thank
that.
you.
Good
Thank you.
imagery.
I'm trying.
Okay, you got it. Next up. Okay, sometimes I'm really good with names. Sometimes I'm horrible. I'm going to just do my best guess. Federica, is that pronounced correctly? Unmute and you can take off with your presentation of your book.
Thank you, Jim. Hi, everyone. And yes, that's your pronunciation was perfect. I'm going to present from my book, Unearthed. Here it is. Which was out in late 2021 with Kelsey Books. It's my first poetry book after years of writing about poetry. This is the first that I've just been publishing my own work since 2020. So it's been a rush and scary and yet very short journey. The book is about things that we can unearth, things that are mysterious, secret, folklore, twisted things, roots, natures, and everything that we keep hidden. Some of the poets came out in mainstream journals before, some others in more genre, horror, fantasy magazines. I wouldn't call it a horror book, but I decided that I'm gonna read from one of the darkest ones, so that if anyone gets it, you know what you're getting into. I think there's much hope in this book and much rebirth, but there are also many twists And the poem is Isabella and the Basil Pot, and I call it a reverse decphastic because it is about Isabella and the Pot of Basil, which is a painting done many times by the Pre-Raphaelite painters whom I love. But it's also that they were writing about the Boccaccio short story, Elizabeth and the Pot of Basil. So they were starting from literature and then painting, and then I'm redoing it in poetry. And like Robert, who read before, said, he talked about beheadings. This story is also about beheading in the Boccaccio story, not in my poem necessarily. So here goes, Isabella and the Basil Pot. What grows in your garden at night, at the time when nobody looks? My own is filled with regrets and the bodies I planted last spring. What looks out from the mirror at dawn when nobody else is awake? I can see a face not my own, thin hands beckon to me. How much blood flows every day under the bridge of your brow? Mine is steady, still with the pain of luring the dead to return. The coin in their mouth is golden, their hair glimmers with blood. Thank you.
Gruesome, but really well described. Thank you. And let me just repeat, I know a number of you have already done this. Please put a link in the chat to where we can find your book to purchase it. I will actually take those links, make sure that they're functional and pared down to the bare minimum, and they will be posted with the YouTube video of this reading so that those who follow and have a chance to view the poetry book party will be able to find your books as well. I believe that brings us to Annette.
Hello, I am Annette Langlois, Grunseth, and I live in Green Bay. And I've published 2 books, and I'm going to talk about my second book, which is a hybrid, and it is called Combat on Campus, Writing Through War. And it is my brother, Peter Langlois, his letters that he wrote home from Vietnam and from basic training in Vietnam. And he had just graduated from UW-Madison in 1967 with a journalism degree, and then he was drafted. So off he went to Vietnam. And at the same time that he was writing letters home, I was a freshman on the UW-Madison campus, and I walked right into the anti-war protests on campus. So it's a hybrid of his letters and my poetry. And his letters are actually riveting, and they read like a novel because he puts in dialogue and he describes the battles of infantry and what he was going through. And he also gets into some of the political issues that he encountered while he was there. So he has the letters and I have the poetry. So I'm writing documentary poetry in this book that talks about some of our growing up, some of his combat in Vietnam and his post-traumatic stress after he came home. So 50 years after the war, I really wrote this book to honor my brother who was not welcomed home, along with many other Vietnam veterans. And so to honor veterans, I'm putting these letters and poems together. His letters were published in our hometown newspaper in Wausau, Wisconsin for the year he was in Vietnam. So they were extremely well written, and there was quite a following of his letters. When he came home, he wanted nothing to do with Vietnam, and he didn't want to do anything with publishing his letters. My parents kept the letters in a safe deposit box for 50 years, and they thought a book should be published. Sadly, my brother passed away in 2004 from an Agent Orange cancer, and he left behind the letters in an extensive photo album. So there are quite a few photos from his album in this book. And my poems talk about the anti-war protests on campus, what it was like to worry about family members being sent to war, poems about a war we couldn't win, and how the war affected our family after he came home. So I worked on the book off and on for 15 years. And as a promise to my parents, I published it 9 years ago, and it was published by Elm Grove Press in Old Mystic, Connecticut. So I'd like to share, my books are available on my website, AnnetteGrunseth.com, as well as on Amazon. And I'd like to share one poem from the book which talks about our growing up. It's called Pears. Growing up in the shadow of World War II, my brother grabs a pear from the green stamp fruit bowl, pulls the stem out with his teeth, pretends to throw it, making hand grenade sounds, blasting sounds. He arranges Green Army men on the floor for attack and retreat, plays war games in a foxhole dug into the empty lot next door. As a Boy Scout, he learns survival, camping out on weekend bivouacs. With Dad, he hunts pheasant, partridge, and sometimes deer. He becomes a good shot. Like his father, uncle, and grandfather, he grows up to serve in the military. His draft number comes up at college, graduation, 1967. After basic training, he flies off to Vietnam, hastily prepared. He is issued old weapons from past wars, has no rain gear for monsoon season. My parents buy a rain suit and mail it to him. His letters tell of living in a track as they sweep the jungle, rolling through rice paddies, dodging snipers and ambushes. His letters describe mortar attacks, direct hits, and missing limbs. Scouting and hunting skills keep him alive in that jungle. He tells me, "You have it easy because you're a girl. You weren't forced into war or that kind of fear." Maybe I have it easier, but whenever I eat a pear, I feel his burden. My guilt ignites as the taste of pear explodes in my mouth. Thank you.
Wow, as someone who had a draft number at the end of my high school career in 1969, that was a little personal and very well done. Thank you.
Thank you.
I want to try something just to see if this will actually work. I'm going to see if I can share my screen. Oh gosh, I don't want the whole screen. I want this. And let's see if that works. Well, that wasn't exactly what I was hoping for, but that's the cover of my book that goes with the title poem. So now I'm going to stop sharing screen and we'll go back to here. And since I didn't record it earlier, I think I will just quickly share that with you again. And it's a short little thing. And as I mentioned, very alliterative. Leave a light on. Rattle of rain on roof, whisper of wind in willow, swallow's song in summer, anguish of absence in autumn, peeling paint on yellow porch, lantern's light left burning. And that is from my book, Leave a Light On, available on Amazon or signed copy from me. And I will post a link as well in the chat for you. At this point, we have gone through all of those who are scheduled, who were able to join us. I'm going to do this because I found it to be really popular. I'm going to stop the recording, but keep the meeting open so we can have a party and talk to each other.